So the big question is this: how are gigging musicians like us, who don't make any money streaming, who are spending money from our own pockets, how do we treat our music careers as online businesses in a way that lets us get our music and the things we believe in out to the world, yet still remain profitable? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answer. My name is Jared Judge, and welcome to the Gigging Musician Podcast. What's up, everybody? It's Jared Judge on the Gigging Musician Podcast. So I want to tell you a quick story about why I never manually coordinate musicians for a gig ever again, and I refuse to. And so I'm going to start by telling you a little story. It's about 2 years ago, pretty early on into the Book Live Pro process when I was building it, and staffing was not yet automated. And so here's what happened, is that we had a gig at the Black Swan, which is one of my favorite venues. It's where me and my wife got married. And it was a string trio, 2 violins and a cello for a wedding, beautiful wedding ceremony. And it was at the end of a very, very busy summer for me, because, we'd implemented the booking optimized web pages and all that, and we were just very busy. And so by this point, the end of the summer, I needed a break from playing gigs, and everyone's entitled to a break. You should definitely take them if you don't, otherwise you'll burn out. And so I was not playing this gig. I had coordinated it though, so I used my spreadsheet and texted and emailed the 3 musicians that were going to be playing, heard back from all 3 of them. They are good to go, got them their music, still pretty manual at that point, but they confirmed, and I believed that they were going to do it, so I was, what a relief, I could finally take that break that I deserved. And so the day comes, it was a Saturday, pretty chilly, kind of like it's cold out right now. And I decided I wanted to go on a refreshing walk downtown and just see what happened. So I walked downtown, and it was about the time that the gig was supposed to start. And I was like, well, as a business owner, you're always worried about what can happen because there's a lot of unknowns. You're relying on a lot of people. And so I was just walking around trying to relax, and I couldn't. I just kept feeling like I want to go see what's happening at that gig. And so I walked right to that venue, the Black Swan, and just decided to poke my head in, listen for a little bit. Hopefully I was going to hear some beautiful music and be relaxed enough to go about my day. Poke my head in, and I hear the music, and it sounds very treble. Like there was no bottom end, there was no bass end to this. And if you know anything about string trios and the sound of a cello, is that it's in the low frequency spectrum, and you should hear it. And I didn't. And I was freaking out. I said, what the heck is going on here? And so I decided to just poke my head in a little further, looked, and I saw 2 chairs filled with violins and an empty chair right next to them. And my heart sank. And it was, at that point, that was the worst thing that had happened to my string quartet. And so I get on my phone, I call the cello player, and he doesn't answer his phone. And I'm like, oh, crap. I definitely was worried about his health, is everything okay? But I was also worried about my reputation as a string quartet operator and business owner. And so I couldn't hear from him. And so I go into problem-solving mode, and I call around to all the cellos in my city that I had on my roster, and finally I got hold of one. Shout out to Yang if you're listening to this. Thanks for saving the day. Yang answered. He said, yes, I'm available. I'll get in Concert Black and just race downtown. And unfortunately he didn't make it in time for the ceremony, which is not his fault, obviously. But he did make it for their cocktail hour, which the string trio was contracted to play for. And he saved the day. So after this event, my whole relaxing day was ruined. I felt terrible about this. I was very grateful that Yang saved the day. But afterwards, I called, I let the bride and groom have a couple days to enjoy their honeymoon and just settle down from the wedding. And then after those days, I called them and apologized profusely. Hey, Canadian geese, what's up? So I called the bride and groom, apologized profusely, and let them know this has never happened to us. I will be making some changes for it. I refunded them a portion of their ceremony because they didn't get the service that we were contractually obligated to provide them and promise them. So I refunded them a little bit, and they were happy. They understood. I called the cello player. I was able to eventually get a hold of him. He was having a family emergency, which totally understandable. Those things come up. The issue was that he didn't let me know. He didn't let me know that he wasn't going to be able to make his professional obligation, which that's a big no-no. Like, yes, we're all human. Things happen. We get sick. We have family emergencies, and so forth. But the most important part of any business really is the communication. So I felt he had let me down. And that was the last time that he played for my string quartet. Found some other cellos to fill in. But more importantly, I was never going to let that happen again. And so that was really the last time that I ever used a manual way of coordinating a string quartet or coordinating any musicians, because it was so unreliable. So came up with a plan. Book Live Pro was already helping people, book the gigs and plan out the music. Next, it was going to automate the contracting of the musicians and the reminders. So I built this whole plan where once I set which musicians were going to play the gig, it sent them a request via text and email with all the gig details, date, time, payment, venue. They got 2 buttons. Are you available? Yes or no. All they had to do was click one of those. Once they clicked yes, they were locked in for the gig. And then after that, I had it automatically send some reminders to them 3 days before the gig via text and email, and then on the day of the gig via text and email, and day before too. And then I made it customizable for other groups because some people might not want such an aggressive reminder strategy. I did, because I didn't want that happening again. And so once I finally set that live, that was when a huge sigh of relief, huge burden lifted off of my shoulders, being that I never had to manually contract the musicians for a gig, never had to remind them again, because I knew that the system was going to remind them 100% of the time and take that weight off of my shoulders. So that was the last time I ever contracted musicians manually. And if you're interested in seeing that in action, learning a little bit more about that, definitely go ahead and sign up for the masterclass. That is at www.booklivepro.com/masterclass. And I will tell you the stories about some of the other parts of the app that I built and why I did that. And I'll show you a breakdown, a demo of how some of these features work. It's super cool, and it helps us gigging musicians do more of what we love. So after all, that's what we all want to do more of, is play music and get paid to do it. So thanks for listening to the Gigging Musician Podcast, guys. See you next time.